The silence of the house on the morning I left was heavier than the suitcases packed by the door. My name is Ilara, and at 22 years old, I believed that silence was the sound of my impending freedom. I had spent my entire life in the suffocating warmth of a small town in Ohio, wrapped in the cotton wool safety of my parents' anxiety. They loved me with a ferocity that felt less like affection and more like captivity. I was their only child, their miracle, their fragile porcelain doll. But porcelain is made to sit on a shelf, and I wanted to break. I wanted to see where the cracks would form. So, the moment the ink was dry on my offer letter for a junior marketing position in the city, I packed my life into cardboard boxes. My mother sat at the kitchen table, her hands clutching a mug of tea that had long gone cold, tears silently tracking through the powder on her cheeks. My father paced the hallway, a rhythmic creaking of floorboards that usually signaled deep contemplation, but now screamed of panic. The city will eat you alive. Ilara, my father had warned, his voice low and trembling. You don't understand the world out there. It isn't like it is here. There are predators. There is crime. There are shadows you cannot see until they are already upon you. I didn't listen. I stood in the hallway, chin high, fueled by the arrogance of youth. I told myself they were old, scared, and out of touch. I thought I was strong. I thought that because I had read books and watched movies, I understood the nature of danger. I believed that bad things only happened to people who weren't paying attention, and I planned to be the most attentive person in the world. I kissed them goodbye, promised to call, and drove away without looking back, terrified that if I saw their faces in the rearview mirror, I would turn the car around. The city was everything I had dreamed of, and everything they had warned me about. All at once, it was a cacophony of sirens, shouting, and the constant, low-frequency hum of millions of lives intersecting. I found an apartment in a walk-up building that smelled permanently of boiled cabbage and old cigarettes. The rent was astronomical, devouring more than half my paycheck, but the sunlight that hit the fire escape in the mornings made me feel like the main character in a movie. I wasn't alone for long. Maya, a girl I met during orientation at work, moved in 2 weeks later. Maya was everything I wasn't: loud, chaotic, and fearless. She had wild curly hair and a laugh that could shatter glass. Together, we were invincible. We painted the walls a soft yellow to hide the water stains. We bought cheap wine and drank it out of mismatched mugs on the roof, watching the skyline glitter like a jewelry box spilled against black velvet. We were drunk on independence. We went to underground clubs where the bass thumped so hard it rattled your ribcage. We danced until our feet blistered, sweating out the anxiety of our entry-level jobs. We walked home at 2:00 a.m., arms linked, singing off-key, convinced that the city belonged to us. We lived with the reckless abandon of people who have never known true tragedy. We thought we were writing our own stories, unaware that someone else had already picked up the pen. The shift was subtle at first, like a drop in barometric pressure before a storm. It started about 3 months into my new life. We were at a club downtown, a cavernous place with strobe lights that chopped time into disorienting fragments. I was laughing at something Maya said when I felt a prickling sensation on the back of my neck. It was a primal instinct, something ancient and dormant that suddenly woke up. I turned, scanning the sea of bodies. Near the exit, standing perfectly still amidst the writhing crowd, was a man. He was too far away to make out his features, obscured by the smoke and the flashing lights. But I knew he was looking at me. Not at the crowd. Not at the DJ. At me. Ilara, you okay? Maya shouted over the music. Yes, I lied. Turning back to her, just thought I saw someone I knew. I told myself it was paranoia. I told myself it was just a stranger zoning out. But then the notes started. The first one was taped to the mailbox in the lobby of our building. It wasn't in an envelope. It was just a folded piece of lined paper. Blue looks good on you. It read. It brings out the sadness in your eyes. I stared at the paper, my blood running cold. I was wearing a blue coat that day. I crumpled the note and threw it in the trash, telling myself it was a prank. Maybe a neighbor. Maybe a weird guy from the bodega. 2 days later, another note appeared. This time slipped under the windshield wiper of my car. You laugh too loud with your friend. It makes you look careless. Be careful. Ilara. The use of my name turned my fear into nausea. I stopped walking home with headphones on. I started checking locks 3-4 times before bed. I didn't tell Maya. I didn't want to shatter the illusion of our perfect, free lives. I didn't want to admit that my parents might have been right. I wanted to handle it. I wanted to be the strong, independent woman I claimed to be. But the stalker was escalating. He wasn't just watching. He was studying. A week later, a note was slid under our apartment door. You walked home at 10:45 last night. You stopped to tie your shoe on 5th Street. You are so vulnerable when you look down. Every step I took became a performance of terror. I felt eyes on me in the grocery store, on the subway, in the reflection of shop windows. I stopped going out. Meyer asked what was wrong, but I blamed it on work stress. I couldn't tell her that I felt like a hunted animal in my own city. I was drowning in dread. But I refused to call home. To call home was to admit defeat. The night it happened, the weather had turned vicious. A cold front had swept through the city, bringing with it a biting wind that emptied the streets earlier than usual. Maya was staying at her boyfriend's place, leaving me alone in the apartment. I had run out of milk and, against every screaming instinct in my body, I decided to run to the corner store. It was only 2 blocks. I would be fast. The walk there was uneventful, but the silence of the street felt heavy, pregnant with malice. The wind howled through the alleyways, rattling the chain-link fences. I bought the milk, keeping my head down, and hurried back. I was halfway down the block when I heard it. Click-clack, click-clack. Heavy boots on pavement. Slow, deliberate. I stopped. The footsteps stopped. I started walking again, faster this time. The footsteps matched my pace, echoing off the brick buildings. My heart hammered against my ribs like a trapped bird. I didn't look back. I knew that if I looked back, the nightmare would become real. I reached for my keys, my fingers trembling so hard I dropped them. The metallic jingle sounded like a gunshot in the quiet street. Damn it! I hissed, crouching to grab them. The footsteps accelerated. They weren't walking anymore. They were running. I grabbed the keys and spun around. But it was too late. A shadow detached itself from the darkness of the alleyway I was passing. A hand, smelling of leather and dirt, clamped over my mouth, stifling my scream before it could leave my throat. I was yanked backward with terrifying strength. The world spun streetlights, brick walls, the night sky all blurring into a kaleidoscope of panic. I was thrown into the alley, my back slamming against the rough brick. The impact knocked the wind out of me. Before I could inhale, a forearm crushed against my windpipe. And then, the sensation that freezes the blood of anyone who feels it. The cold, thin bite of steel against the jugular. Don't, a voice whispered. It was a raspy, distorted sound, close to my ear. Don't you dare scream. If you make a sound, I will open your throat right here. I froze. Tears hot and fast spilled from my eyes, tracking through the grime on my face. My body was vibrating. A tuning fork struck by terror. The man shifted his weight, pushing my head back against the wall to expose my neck further. He moved into the sliver of light cast by a distant street lamp. Look at me, he commanded. I didn't want to. I wanted to close my eyes and wake up in my childhood bed. But the knife pressed harder, drawing a singular bead of blood. I opened my eyes. The scream died in my throat, replaced by a shock so profound it paralyzed me. It wasn't a stranger. It wasn't a random predator from the city's underbelly. It was Julian, my cousin, the boy who had sat across from me at every Thanksgiving, every Christmas, every birthday party for 20 years. The boy who had always been quiet, lurking in the corners of the room while I opened presents. Julian. I choked out, the name tasting like ash. Why? The recognition in his eyes was not one of familial love. It was a deep, festering hatred that looked like it had been rotting inside him for a lifetime. He looked older than his 23 years. His face was gaunt, his eyes rimmed with red, his lips pulled back in a snarl that revealed yellowed teeth. Why? He mocked, his voice rising in pitch. She asks why. The princess asks why. He leaned in closer, his breath smelling of decay. Do you know what it's like to be a ghost? Ilara, do you know what it's like to stand in a room full of people who share your blood and have them look right through you to smile at her? The memories flooded back, unbidden and violent. Julian had been the family tragedy. His father had left before he was born. His mother, my aunt, had struggled with addiction, drifting in and out of rehab, leaving Julian to be raised by a rotation of reluctant relatives. He was always there, in hand-me-down clothes that didn't fit, watching me unwrap the newest toys, watching my parents fawn over my grades, my piano recitals, my existence. I had never been cruel to him. I had smiled. I had said hello, but I had never truly seen him either. To me, he was just Julian quiet. Weird, angry Julian. Background noise in the movie of my life. I watched you. He spat, the knife trembling against my skin. I watched them give you the world. They bought you cars. They paid for your college. They cried when you left. And me. When I left, nobody noticed. Nobody called. I lived in a shelter 3 blocks from here for a month. Ilara, did you know that? No, because nobody cares about Julian. I didn't know. I stammered. Julian, please. We can help you. My parents. Shut up. He roared, slamming my head back against the brick. Don't you speak about them. They are the reason I am nothing. And you are the symbol of everything I was denied. You think you re so special. You think you re so free. You re just a spoiled little girl playing dress up in the city. He shifted his grip on the knife. His eyes were wide, manic, completely detached from reality. I am going to take it away. All of it. I am going to snuff you out. Ilara. And when they find you, when they weep over your casket, they will finally know pain. They will finally feel what I have felt every single day of my miserable life. He raised the knife. I saw the glint of the blade. I saw the end of my life in the reflection of his madness. I closed my eyes, apologizing to my parents in my heart for not listening, for dying so far from home. Drop it. The voice was low, thunderous, and came from the entrance of the alley. It wasn't a shout. It was a command that carried the weight of impending violence. Julian flinched, spinning around, dragging me with him as a human shield. The knife dug deeper into my skin. Standing at the mouth of the alley, silhouetted against the streetlights, was a figure. He was massive, his shoulders broad, standing with a stillness that was more terrifying than Julian's manic energy. Stay back, Julian screamed, his voice cracking. I'll kill her. I swear to God. I'll cut her. The man stepped forward. He didn't run. He walked, calmly, methodically, like a glacier moving through a valley. I am Silas, the man said. His voice was devoid of fear. Your Uncle Ilara's father hired me 3 months ago. I have been 10 steps behind her every single day. I have watched her buy coffee. I have watched her go to work. And I have been watching you. Julian. My mind reeled. My father, my terrified, overprotective father, had hired a private security guard to shadow me. The feeling of being watched. It hadn't just been Julian. It had been Silas, my silent guardian angel, hovering in the periphery. You're lying. Julian shrieked. Get back. I don't lie. Silas said, taking another step. He was close now, 10 feet away. And I don't miss. Let her go. Son, this is your only chance to walk away alive. She deserves this. Julian cried, tears streaming down his face now, mixing with the grime. She stole my life. She is innocent. Silas said, and she is under my protection. Julian snapped. The years of neglect, the boiling jealousy, the madness, it all coalesced into a single moment of violence. He roared, a sound that was less human and more animal, and swung the knife toward my throat. I tried to pull away, but his grip was iron. I felt the sting of the blade, slicing the surface of my skin. But Silas moved faster than anything I had ever seen. One moment, he was standing 10 feet away. And the next, he was a blur of motion. He didn't shout. He didn't wind up. He simply launched himself forward. His hand shot out, catching Julian's wrist mid-swing. The sound of the impact was sickening, a crunch of bone. Julian screamed, the knife flying from his grasp and clattering into the darkness. Silas didn't stop. He twisted Julian's arm, spinning him away from me. I collapsed to the ground, gasping for air, clutching my bleeding neck. Julian, fueled by adrenaline and insanity, didn't stay down. He scrambled up, swinging wild, desperate punches at the giant man. I hate you. I hate all of you, he screamed, striking Silas's chest. It was like hitting a concrete wall. Silas absorbed the blows without flinching. He looked at Julian with a mixture of pity and professional detachment. Then, with a single, efficient motion, Silas drove his fist into Julian's solar plexus. Julian doubled over, the air leaving his lungs in a wheeze. Silas followed with a hook to the jaw that spun my cousin around and sent him crashing to the wet pavement. He didn't move. Silas stood over him for a moment, chest heaving slightly, before turning to me. The scary, imposing giant knelt down, his face suddenly soft with concern. He pulled a handkerchief from his pocket and pressed it gently against the cut on my neck. It's shallow, he said, his voice rumbling in his chest. You're safe now. Ilara, I've got you. The sirens began to wail in the distance, getting louder, coming for us. I looked at Julian, lying in a heap on the dirty ground. The boy I had played tag with, the boy who had been invisible. When the police arrived, they handcuffed Julian. As they dragged him past me, he lifted his head. His nose was broken, blood streaming down his face, but his eyes were locked on mine. They weren't empty anymore. They were filled with a profound, bottomless despair. You stole everything, he whispered, his voice broken and bubbling. You will never forget me now. Ilara. Now, I am part of your story forever. He was right. The ride to the hospital was a blur of lights and questions. Silas rode with me, silent and stoic. When I was discharged, my parents were there. They had flown in immediately. My mother hugged me so tight, I thought my ribs would crack. She sobbed into my hair, her body shaking. My father stood behind her, his face pale, his eyes red. He looked at Silas and nodded, a silent exchange of gratitude between men who understood that the world was dangerous. I didn't argue with them when they packed up my apartment. I didn't fight to stay in the city. The illusion was shattered. The freedom I had craved tasted like ashes in my mouth. I returned to Ohio. I slept in my childhood bed, but I didn't sleep well. Every time I closed my eyes, I heard the click-clack of boots. I felt the cold steel. I saw Julian's face, the face of my family, twisted into a mask of murder. I had left home to find freedom, to prove that I was strong and the world was manageable. Instead, I learned the hardest lesson of all. We are never truly free from where we come from. The past has footsteps, and if you don't turn around to face them, they will eventually run you down. My father sat on the edge of my bed one night, weeks later, watching me stare at the ceiling. I'm sorry, I whispered. You were right. The world is dangerous. He took my hand, his grip callous and warm. The world is dangerous. Ilara, he said softly, but that is why we build walls. That is why we watch. Not to keep you prisoner, but to keep the monsters out. I squeezed his hand back. I was safe, but I was changed. The girl who drove away in the car, with the music blasting, was gone. Died in that alleyway. In her place was a woman who checked the locks, who watched the shadows, and who knew that sometimes the monsters aren't hiding under the bed. Sometimes they are sitting at the dinner table, waiting for their turn to be seen.